welcome to episode 4 of Trapped in My Mind. I'm your host, Seth, and today with me I have a very special guest, Megan Troost.
Hey everybody, what's up?
I am very excited that you reached out for one, and that you're here now and didn't, bail on it. Just to give some background, we had 5th and 6th grade together, went to the same school in 7th and 8th, haven't really seen or heard from each other since.
I saw you at a Kroger once.
Okay.
And I didn't say hi because I was like, you does not want to say hi to me.
Oh, you should have.
Yeah.
You should have.
But that was it.
Yeah, so we haven't caught up in a while. We briefly caught up when you got here, but very minimal. So I am very excited. You've always been one to be, from what I remember, pretty outgoing.
Yeah.
So, the topics that you said you wanted to discuss are very interesting to me. But I do have one question. What did make you want to reach out and be on here?
You know what? I don't know what it was. When I saw that you were doing this, I was so inspired that one of my old childhood classmates was looking to be creative in a time where things are so stifled right now. And I was like, I don't know why, but I feel like I just have to reach out to him. I have to talk to him about whatever he wants to talk about. And I'm very passionate about talking about the topics that we are going to be discussing today. And I was like, you know what? I might as well just do it. Like, who cares? It could be fun. So I reached out.
Yeah, and I'm very glad you did. And I think I'll learn a lot just because, you've moved to New York. Your experiences, I'm sure, are a lot different than mine, who has been in Michigan my whole life.
Right.
So first off, just a simple question. How has New York been? What have you liked about it? What is the struggles? Just because I'm curious.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's New York City.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. But with that being said, there are so many things that suck about it. Like, you walk in the subway and there's literal puke and shit on the subway.
Yeah.
So. And
then you have people, I was only there once, but I remember the first subway ride into the city, there was, I think, a woman who I'm guessing was strung out on some type of drug because she was just like a sunken in figure of herself going in between carts. And, my buddy who goes there pretty often says, if you see somebody going between carts, it's not good news, right?
No.
Because no one travels in between the carts when it's moving.
No.
And yeah, she reeked.
Yeah, I'm sure she needed a shower or something. But that's also an issue within New York, is the homelessness problem and drug problem, stuff like that. But also, with that being said, it's, the most amazing city in the world.
Oh, yeah.
Even on my worst day, I walk out into my neighborhood, I'm like, I'm in New York City. And, I did that. But, of course, it's expensive to live there. It's pretty shut down right now because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else except here for the holidays. But
Yeah. Has the whole, shutdown, made it a weird place to live in? Just because I feel like, I was only there for vacation, but one of the main things there was the food industry.
Yeah.
All these different restaurants and the nightlife.
Yeah.
So is it I don't want to say depressing, but is it a little bit sad to live in the area right now? Or?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we watched our city fall apart, basically, and I lost my job because of the pandemic.
Jeez. I
I was a coordinator at a 5-star hotel in the bar, and I was a recent hire. I hadn't even been there for 6 months. So then once the pandemic hit, they were like, we're sorry, we got to let you go. And things are slowly but surely opening up, and they're doing this, outdoor dining situation, but it's winter in New York right now.
I know, it's freezing.
It's freezing, and there's literally pictures of people sitting outside with snow on them, and they're enjoying their dinner.
Yeah, trying to keep the businesses alive.
Exactly.
That's got to be just a tough city, especially right now.
It really is.
I'm glad you made it, because I know I had dreams and aspirations of moving to Chicago, New York, LA, and although I'm happy where I'm at for now, those areas are definitely alluring. So you made it. I'm excited to hear more about how that's gone, maybe outside the podcast. But anyway, I sent you topics, or a couple topics, and you sent back the ones that you wanted to talk about. And I guess the first one we can just start jumping into is the whole pronoun thing. You wanted to discuss pronouns.
Yeah, totally.
And so I have no problem doing that. I will say my pronouns are he, him, and his.
Perfect.
I don't know.
Mine are hers, she, hers.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So I guess my first question would be, and again, if I sound insensitive, please tell me. I have no problem calling whoever, however they want to be called, what name they want to be called, associated with any gender or title. But my only question is, do you think it would offend somebody if you come in here and I say she unknowingly, and then maybe you're a they.
Mm-hmm.
Is that offensive because I didn't ask?
It can be, and I think it kind of varies from place to place. Like in New York, people feel safe enough where they can like meet you and go, hey, my pronouns are they, them, theirs. Maybe in Michigan, where there is a little bit more of a conservative mindset, they might not feel completely comfortable saying these are my pronouns.
Mm-hmm.
And I even have friends that live in Michigan that are like, my parents are super conservative, under the table, I'm they, them, theirs. But I guess with my parents, I'm she, her, hers, which is really unfortunate because they are not receiving the respect that they are asking for. And it's a simple ask, like, my name's Megan. I'm not going to have you call me, like, Maria or, like, something that's, like, not me. But is it offensive? It definitely can be to certain people. But for those people that it's really important to, they will usually, right off the bat, say, hey, these are my pronouns. And I also don't think it's really offensive to ask because you're taking the step to go, hey, I just want to make sure, like, what are your pronouns? Okay. And I think as we move forward, that is going to be the norm of, like, when we're with a group of people, they'll say, just so everybody knows, these are my pronouns.
Yeah, I mean, even now, I think, like you said, I think it's going to be moving that direction.
Yeah.
And at work, in my signature, I have to have my pronouns.
Yeah.
And so I have no problem, and I know I have to get a lot better at asking people for their pronouns instead of just assuming.
Right.
But I guess my one question, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, but I guess, and this hopefully doesn't sound sensitive, I understand he and she.
Yeah.
What makes somebody a they? Do you know?
Well, this is like, I was thinking about all these like topics that we're going to talk about. And like the theme for today is like, everything is a spectrum.
Okay.
So they, them, theirs, on that spectrum, that person is considered like non-binary, where they don't conform to the gender norms that they are a man or a woman. And that's just all in preference. How do I say this? It's literally just all preference. They, them, theirs. Like, I don't identify with a woman. I don't identify with a man. And I'm just somewhere in the middle. And that is along that spectrum of like, I'm just somewhere in the middle. And it's not really important for me to conform to that she, her, hers.
Okay. So going against that idea of thinking, you obviously have people who will be like, okay, well, there's male and female. So how do you identify as something other than that? Like, I know, and I'll just say my understanding, right?
Yeah.
With just gender, how I see it, there's male and female. Now, what you want to be, like if I wanted to become a female, then I could become transgender, right? Or I could say that I wish to become female. But if you want to be something other than male or female, I guess that's where I think a lot of people might get maybe either uncomfortable with that thought or sometimes even hostile. Like, you can't be not a male or a female. And I'm not saying I get hostile because I definitely wouldn't, but I try to understand, I guess, and I don't know if, since you're not a they, if you could answer, but why is it, I know I'm not making much sense.
No.
So, and stop me if I'm not making sense.
I think I hear what you're saying.
So, if someone's gay, right, they can't just choose that they're gay.
Right.
No, they're just gay.
Yeah.
Right? Is it the same, in your opinion, do you think it's the same thing if somebody wants to identify as a they, that they're not just doing it because they want to, it's just they don't feel like a male or a female?
Yeah, I mean, and that is also a difference between sexual orientation, and then there's a difference between sex and gender. Your sex is you're a male, I'm a female. Your gender is what you feel in your mind. So you feel like a man, I feel like a woman. So there's man versus male. And just a reminder, male is like the sexual organs. And then man is like how you feel on the inside. And then for a woman presenting, the gender is woman and the sex is female.
Okay.
And then you brought up like being gay. Like, we as humans, it's easy for us to put things into black and white. That's why people are so, I guess, like adamant about like, we have to have a label. Like, are you a man, a woman, male, female? There are some people that are like, I don't see myself as either. And they could say, I'm non-binary, but I think that I'm gay, whatever that means to them. Or if they're non-binary, they might just say, I'm queer, because their sexual organs are, let's say, it's a female. They might say, like, I'm queer because I identify as non-binary, but I have a vagina, and I'm attracted to women/females. So these kind of conversations, especially when it comes to queer, like queer is a pretty general.
Yeah, I'm not so sure what the difference is between queer and then gay or lesbian.
Mm-hmm. Queer is more of like that non-binary kind of narrative where you're somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe the idea of being queer or they stems from a long history of not feeling included in either the female or the male group, just like being isolated? Or do you think it's just like internal programming from your brain that just says you don't, like right off the bat, you don't feel like that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's different for every case, because with transgender people, I have friends that are transgender, and they said growing up, like even when they were super little, that they knew that they were in the wrong body. Mm-hmm. So that might be a case where they were like, you know, internal programming, this isn't right. Where I've had friends who they have their sex is female, but they go by they. And they recently found out that they want to be called they, them, theirs. And it was just kind of like an experience thing. As they went throughout their life, they were like, these are my pronouns of they, them, theirs.
So do people who identify as they, them, theirs, will they accept that their organs are male or female, but say, hey, still call me them, they, or theirs? Like,
yeah.
Okay, so I think maybe that's where the friction is about, because I think people who might say that there's only male or female are trying to argue that you think that you're not one of those genders, but you're, which one is it? Gender is male or female, or is gender your label? Like,
you're man, woman, and then your sex is male, female.
So the people would be saying that you can't be, your sex can't be not male or female. And I don't so you're saying the people who are identifying their gender as something other than male or female, man or woman, they have, wow, I just lost my train of thought. They are, gender and sex is completely different.
Correct.
Okay. I think I understand it.
Okay.
So that's why I guess you should ask, or just be mindful that people might, they know what their organs are. They're not saying that that's not true. They're not saying I'm not a male or I'm not a female or male, but I don't feel like one or the other.
Correct.
So don't classify me as that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I hear that. And I think knowing that, I think, again, this is where it's on a spectrum. You have people who are on one side that are going to be hostile no matter what because they believe it's black and white.
Yep.
And then I also do think, and please tell me if this is wrong, on the other side of the spectrum, you have people who are way the opposite, where it's like, you didn't ask me my gender, I'm super offended now. Yeah. So, I guess, do you have any thoughts of, like, do you think there is two spectrums, or do you think it's more so one side?
I definitely think it's a spectrum.
Okay.
Personally, I have always felt very feminine, but everybody has that femininity and masculinity within them.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. So, like, there's certainly days where I'm like, oh, I feel like a little bit more like, I guess, like, in
macho.
or like butch is like the LGBTQ, you know, word, I guess. But, yeah, I mean, like, it's a spectrum, and nobody should feel the need to feel pigeonholed into, like, being one or the other. Because as humans, like, that's completely impossible. We're so many complex things.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I know I'm really bad at, like, I need a solution, so I need to understand what's going on. So a lot of things for me are black and white. But there is a middle area that's gray. Yeah. And so I guess just understanding that just right there helped me understand why maybe I should ask more. Because, yeah, okay. That makes sense.
And, like, you're a nice guy, so, like, you don't want to offend anybody, I'm sure.
I don't. I really don't. But I also, like, to my point, I also don't want to ask somebody what their pronoun is and then them get offended. Like, why do you think I'm gay, or do you think, you know, like, I feel like you can piss somebody off if you ask them the pronouns, and then you can piss somebody off by not asking them. And I wish it wasn't like that. Because, like I said, I have no problem calling you whatever you want. Right. But I think people just, I don't know, maybe people just like to get pissed off for no reason.
No, totally. And, like, especially today, like, kind of just know your audience. With the older generation, you know, they're not going to be, like, super open to, like, my pronouns, like, you know. Yeah. So just, like, it's going to be, like, our generation and younger where they're going to feel more comfortable to be like, these are my pronouns, please respect them.
I feel like even the older generation, though, if, like, their kid said something, you can't, I mean, maybe not, but
yeah,
I feel like just from what I have heard, obviously I wasn't around in, like, the 50s, 60s, 70s,
right.
But I feel like just being gay now has become a lot more, or queer or lesbian has become a lot more acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong because I haven't faced any type of discrimination in that regard.
Yeah.
Because I identify as straight.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it's a lot, you know, you don't get as much hate now. And I could be completely wrong. So if somebody thinks I'm wrong, please let me know. But I feel like it's a lot easier or more comfortable to be yourself now than it was before. But we still have a long way to go.
It is and it isn't, because there were, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but the amount of Black and brown transgender women that were murdered this year is completely unacceptable. And that number really hasn't changed throughout the years. So while there is some progressiveness within the acceptance of the LGBTQIA plus community, there also is still, like you said, a lot of work to be done.
Oh, yeah.
And even within that community, there's still a lot of hate and racism and things that we need to work out, because, I mean, like, we're in this together. We're a community. And, like, if the rest of the world is tearing us apart, we can't be tearing each other apart.
Yeah. No, I definitely hear that.
Mm-hmm.
So you were saying that there's a abnormal portion of Black and brown transgender people getting murdered?
Yes.
I see. I would just be curious to know, like, if there's a certain pattern of, like, where they, like, are they putting themselves in positions, like, where it's low, where it's, like, poverty or high crime, like, in those areas, or is it just, like, no matter where they are, they seem to be getting targeted? I guess that would be, and I'm not saying if you know or not, but.
I mean, like, it is pretty widespread, especially if you are in, like, a more impoverished town in a rural area. You're going to stick out like a sore thumb. And those people, unfortunately, experience a lot of violence. And even in major cities like New York, they still get killed in this progressive liberal city.
Yeah.
So especially with transgender rights right now, it's something that we definitely need to keep educating ourselves on, because these people are dying and they're just people that are in the wrong body.
Yeah. And I guess this is just a little bit separate from that, but a little bit related. I just want to know your opinion on it, I guess.
Totally.
Because I understand the whole transgender situation. You think you're in the wrong body, and I can get that. Mm-hmm. Where I see maybe that it could be polarizing, or where people might have some issues, is, like, have you heard about where you'll have a male that converted into a female, right? Mm-hmm. And then will play in female sports and then just completely dominate it. I don't know if you're a sports fan at all, but like where do you classify those people? Because then now you have people, you know, defeating all these women in sports because their natural ability is just a little bit higher in the specific sport, or you don't let them play at all. Because, like, you know, I guess what's your opinion on that? Do you think they should be able to play in?
I mean, I'm not a sports fan, number one.
Okay. Yeah, we can just forget it if you want. I'm just curious.
Well, I will say this because I've seen a lot of women, you know, cis-normative women, which is like they're female and women, or a woman. They enter a male sport and they get a bunch of hate for it. Like, I don't get why that's an issue for so many people. Like, a sport is a sport, and there's a lot of crossover where, like, dance is a sport and cheerleading is a sport, and men and women are allowed to participate in both sports. Yeah. So I guess I don't see the issue in, like, if you want to play football and you're a woman, like, go for it. If you're transgender and you want to join a women's league, I don't feel completely responsible for, like, giving an opinion, but yeah,
that's fair. Yeah. No, and it's interesting that you said that, because the last recording, which no one's heard yet, the third episode, we talked about the female kicker who's in football, right? And we both agreed, me and my guests both agreed that it's incredible that she even made it there. She's playing two sports.
Right.
But the issue, or maybe not so much an issue, but the uncomfortable part about, at least in football, you bring a woman into football, right? Let's say it's me against you, right? And I'm going down the field, and you're the last person that can tackle me. It puts me in an awkward position of, do I try to just run over this girl? And granted, you could very well knock me out, right?
Right.
You could.
Yeah.
But if I hit you, the media is going to be like, oh, this guy's an asshole for targeting a girl. But if I run out of bounds, then it's like, I'm not treating her as if she's equal.
Right.
So I agree. I think, if you want to play sports and no matter what your sex is, you should be allowed. But there is a little bit of like a weird like feeling about it. Like when I was playing hockey as a kid, there was a girl who played with us, and like if you hit her, you're an asshole. But if she hit you and you got messed up, you're a bitch because you got hit by a girl. So like what I don't understand why there's such like a weird feeling there.
Yeah, I think that's like the patriarchal norms that have been instilled in us at such a young age and throughout our history. If girls are signing up for a male-dominant sport, quote-unquote, they know what they're signing up for. So they're probably trained, like, if you get tackled, like, it's going to hurt. But like, what you're signing up for. And I guess you shouldn't feel weird for doing that because it's a part of the game. I
know. I just feel like, with today's, like, if there was a video of me just running you over to get to the end zone, people would be on Twitter like, this guy is an asshole. Right. Like, take it easy. But maybe not. And maybe that is just, like, the patriarchal, like, just conditioning I have, which I'm trying to rid of.
Yeah.
But makes sense.
Yeah.
So that you're clearing a lot of things up for me as far as pronouns go. And is another thing you wanted to touch on was sexual orientation. Is that kind of related to this then?
It definitely can be.
And by orientation, you mean like you classify as straight, gay,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We talked about like we are moving in a more progressive direction with the LGBTQIA+ community. Did you have like any questions in particular about it, or?
No, I already asked my question about that specifically. Was I guess what's the difference between queer, gay, and lesbian? I know what gay, I know what lesbian is, but queer or non-binary, or I think there's a whole like catalog of different orientations you can be.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where the more and more orientations that get brought into it, I guess the more confused I get.
Right.
Not so much like hateful, but just confused because I don't understand it. I've never talked to somebody who might be, or at least has told me they're queer or they're non-binary, because I don't know what that means. And like I can look up a Google definition, but that's not as powerful as somebody telling me what it means.
Right. Well, I'll say first, like if you come into contact with a person that is like non-binary, it's better to be like curious about it and say like, like I'm not sure what that means and like what your experience looks like. Could you expand on that for me? Because I'd like to know more about it. That's the best way to go about it.
Okay.
But I'm also going to bring up the word like spectrum again.
Yeah.
Like sexuality is a spectrum and sexual orientation is also a spectrum. So there's also like the Kinsey scale and all that. But like regardless, and it's kind of uncomfortable for a lot of people to accept, is that, you might identify as straight, but like that doesn't mean like you can't have sex with like a man. Or for me, I could say like I'm straight and like have sex with a woman and still say like I'm straight. Your one interaction and one encounter doesn't make you like one or the other. It just means like in that moment you might have found that person attractive and you had sex with them.
See, I'm trying to understand that, because that is
totally
completely different than like anything, and maybe it's because I put things in black and white.
Yeah.
But I feel like let's say I'm straight and I have sex with a man, that now I at least have, I guess maybe now that I'm walking through it, maybe I'm not. Wouldn't that make you bi then? If you have fascinations with both female and male, wouldn't that be bi then?
If you wanted to say like I'm bi, like you're like I'm 50-50, I definitely like men, I definitely like women, like I am bi. Like that's totally like your prerogative to be like this is my label, I'm bisexual. But like if you have like an attraction to a single man, like you could also say like I'm straight, but like I think he's like attractive or something in that nature.
So is that where like non-binary comes in? Like any given day I could be a certain thing?
Yeah, I mean like It's just kind of like what you're feeling like day to day, and non-binary is more so for gender.
Okay.
Queer is the equivalent of like non-binary for sexual orientation.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Forgive me for misusing it.
No, it's okay. I mean, like, this certainly took me quite some time to, like, get the hang of. And as we're moving forward, we're seeing more opportunities to educate other people and ourselves. So, like, don't feel bad if you have questions or anything.
No, I'm asking questions. You're doing a good job of being kind with how you answer them, because I know maybe some things might be hitting a little bit insensitive, and I hope that's not the case.
Yeah.
But so just to kind of wrap that up, one overlying question. I think I already know the answer, but just want to just double check. So people who don't like they might not be male or female, like they could be non-binary, however they identify. Those people would not argue the fact that there are only two types of sexes, right?
If you're non-binary, you're asking?
Yes. If your orientation is different, no matter what it is, would you think that most of those people, no matter what their orientation is, would agree that there's only two sexes? And the issue comes that we don't separate the two?
I think that also you have to consider transgender, which it also brings in gender, and that also gets kind of tricky, or I'm not completely sure, because you can be transgender and have a sex change. What does that mean for them?
Yeah. So if you're coming from female to male,
right?
Would you be transgender in the process and then you just become male, or would you be a male transgender or a female transgender?
Well, okay, so let's say I'm a female right now.
Yes.
And I changed my gender to a man. You would be considered a transgender man.
Because you became a male.
Right.
Man.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I got it. I think I got it.
Yeah.
I think I got it. I think a lot of, just in general, negativity or hostility comes from confusion.
Absolutely.
So clearing things up definitely helps a lot. But I also think a lot of people are hesitant to ask because either, like you said, it takes a lot of time to try to figure it out.
Right.
And some people just don't care enough. Or they don't want, like, for me, I never really asked anybody because, you're saying it's good to be open-minded and ask people, but I feel like, at least maybe in Metro Detroit area, I feel like if I ask somebody, it's almost being offensive, and I shouldn't be, right? It should be more open to talk about. You're saying that's the case in New York? People are more open to
the idea of
that?
I mean, like, and ignorance breeds hate. And a lot of ignorance comes from, like, well, I'm afraid of this because, it's new to me. Like, what if I am X, Y, Z? Yeah. And that's why people stay uneducated, and that's where the hostility, like you said, comes in, and then violence and hatred. It's all a domino effect. So if you can just, like, take a deep breath and go, like, I'm curious about this. I'm not saying, like, this has anything to do with me, but I think it's important for us to look at the rest of our fellow human beings and go, what is their experience? What is their story? Yeah. And how can I relate better to them? Yeah,
definitely. Because I think at the end of the day, we're all, as cliche as it sounds, we're all human. So
exactly.
If you hear from somebody's past what makes them a certain way, it kind of humanizes them in a sense.
Absolutely.
So you can at least become level on that aspect. But another thing that I don't fully understand, but I've learned a little bit more as I've talked to different people, is anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
Mental health in general, I think is very important. I've only ever dealt with, I'd say, depression and, I guess there's a whole slew of mental disorders or issues like that. But anxiety, I understand, like, some big things, but I know certain people who will get anxious just going to a new place, and I don't fully understand why that is, because I'm a new place. It's like, well, just go early and you'll figure it out.
Right.
But it's not. Is it like do you know? Like, is it like a chemical imbalance, or what is it? Do you know?
It is a chemical imbalance and past trauma experience that really inflict it. I mean, anxiety rates tripled when the pandemic hit. Yeah. So this traumatic experience sparked something in a lot of people that led to their anxiety, and people are seeking therapists now. And, it can literally be anything that can happen to you. Like, I got into a car accident my senior year of college, right before I was doing a performance. And that really changed me. Like, I have so much anxiety about driving now that I didn't have before. And it completely totaled my car, and, I had a concussion, I had to go do a show. So, like I said, it could be an experience that changes you and kind of sparks that in you, or you can have it, like, your entire life.
Do you think, then, with that line of thinking, that you can kind of remedy some of those things? Like, I know with, like, depression, there's, like, seasonal depression, there's I guess I don't know all the words to classify it, but there's people that can have depression for a long time, or they can have it just randomly, or situation like when something happens that can spark depression. But I know at least for me, I just had to learn different ways to, not let myself sink so low.
Right.
And that's how it helped me. Do you think there's the same way with like anxiety or any other mental health concern that can be addressed and worked on? And I don't want to just classify it to anxiety and depression. So if there's any other ones that you want to throw out there, because I know I can't be an advocate for mental health if I don't know the other ones. Absolutely. So,
I mean, from my experience, I have anxiety, depression, body dysmorphia, eating disorders, and
Is that all the time, or is it sometimes one comes and the other one goes, or do they all hit at once? Is it all the time?
I'm gonna bring up the word again. It's like a spectrum.
Okay.
So some days I'm feeling good. I don't have any anxiety. My eating's on, but then something will trigger me, and I'm in a depression for the rest of the day. Or maybe the next day I'm feeling happy, and then maybe I check Twitter and I see more terrible news, and then my anxiety flares up. So with everything, it just kind of depends on your environment, what's going on in your mind that day. Did you get enough sleep? Did you eat? Are you with good company? So it's all very subjective.
Can I ask, have you, so you said you struggle with those things in particular, have you ever sought counseling on that?
Oh, absolutely.
And so what are some of the things that, has counseling helped you understand why you might be anxious sometimes more than others, or why you have eating disorders, or some things that could cause those feelings?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I started therapy sophomore year of high school, and I cannot stress this enough that I really believe everybody needs a therapist.
Okay.
And that kind of varies for you might need therapy once a month, or maybe twice a month, or every week. I'm a weekly person. And, you have to find the right therapist for you, and I certainly have. I love my current therapist. She's amazing. But as I said before, as humans, we're so complex. And a lot of it starts in our childhood, and we carry our experiences into adulthood, our depression, our anxiety, our eating disorders, what have you. And it's important to heal that inner child in you before you take your trauma out on somebody else, or even yourself. I mean, that's kind of why, people spiral and develop addiction, or unfortunately, suicide sometimes leads to that. So it's important to take care of your inner self.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with that. I think, for me, like I said, the only mental health battle I've kind of fought was depression, and it was just kind of a snowball of just a bunch of different things not going right.
Right.
And the first year to two after it hit its peak, I still wasn't really dealing with it well. Right. I was trying to figure it out, and now it's 3.5-ish years removed from its peak, and I feel like every day, through conversation, I find out more of, okay, how did I let it get there? Why did that upset me so much? How can I make myself feel better in healthier ways than maybe some of the ways I was trying to make myself feel better? Right. So would you say that counseling for you helped you understand specific reasons of why you were feeling certain ways in different times? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, a lot of it does stem from childhood, and we all have certain triggers. We're not all happy all the time. If I have, I don't know, an argument with my parents or something, I'll be well, that reminds me of the time that this happened, and now I'm upset. So it is kind of coaching yourself through it and going, okay, that was the past. Let's breathe. Let's really think about this. Your emotions are just information. This is all fleeting, So you definitely, once you're in therapy, you learn why the way you are and what makes you tick in a certain way. Yeah, and that's what I love figuring out about myself and about others, because if I can figure out what makes you tick, then I can avoid pressing that button that makes you tick. Or if I can figure out what makes me tick, I can learn to step back before it gets too dark that I don't want to handle that kind of situation. But I will just say, I mean, if we really want to go into things in regards to mental health, I'll just open up with mine and just kind of tell you, because I would be curious to hear, why you think you have some of these battles that you have. But I know it's hard to share, so I have no problem being vulnerable and going first.
Yeah.
But depression's a big thing for me. I think like a lot of people our age specifically, you see your friends struggling with it. You see people committing suicide, which never is easy, ever, especially if they're close to you. It's very difficult. And, I touched on it in, I think, the first episode where I said I'm a control freak. I feel like I have to have things my way. And when I don't have things in control, I feel uncomfortable. And I think that's one main issue of when I kind of reached my peak of depression. And I've learned this through conversations like we're having now, why I was so mad, because subjectively, what I was going through, I don't think was that bad. But just to walk you through it, I was in college. I wasn't having a great semester because I had a rocky relationship, which I shouldn't have let that distract me, but it did, right? And then I had a lot of credit card debt that was adding up just because I like nice things, and I was irresponsible, but I had to learn my lesson. So at the time, I had credit card debt. I had a bad semester or two going into it. I had a relationship that was, coming to an end. And then I also had lost a friend to suicide. And so all these things just hit me at once. And I remember, it was a couple months of just, I don't feel very good. I feel kind of shitty. And then one day, one certain thing set it off. And I know what it was, but I'm not going to share it. One certain thing set it off. I'm in my car. I'm like, I'm just going to crash. Yeah. And what stopped me was I thought about the friend who I'd lost and how it had affected people around him. I'm like, all right, I don't know that that's what I want, but I don't like this. And so luckily, I had it in me to reach out to my brother. And that was another thing that I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with, is reaching out, saying that they need help. Because I know for me, I was like, I can't do this. I'd rather just drive off the road. Called my brother. Conversation was very difficult. I remember just crying, and even talking about it now gets me kind of worked up. Totally. But it brought us a lot closer. And without going into too much detail, either way, they kind of helped me step off the ledge. And it wasn't like it was a night and day fix. For the next year or so, year and a half, I was spending more money trying to figure out things, like trying to fill the void with objects, which
never works.
Made problems worse that I'm paying for now.
Right.
I never drank before that, ever, and I was 22, and then I started drinking like every day, which, again, expensive and not good for your health, and you do a lot of shit that you regret.
Exactly.
So that was very difficult for me. But one thing that I've kind of learned is that I think what ultimately was so upsetting is that was the first time in my life where I felt like I had control of nothing. I couldn't control my girlfriend. I couldn't control my friends. I couldn't control my grades. I couldn't control my finances. And I was like, all right, well, if I can't control anything, see you later.
Right.
But I watched a TED Talk recently where there was some guy talking about depression. It was called I'm Fine is the name of the TED Talk. And he put it this way, and until I watched this episode, which was just a few weeks ago, I never realized what I think really saved me in that moment was, he said, when he went to his counselors, because I've never had counseling, I know I should, but he said his counselor asked him one simple question from the get-go. Do you actually want to die, or do you just want this feeling to go away? Yeah. And even though that's such a simple question to ask, I never realized that. Yeah. And I think that's a big distinction that people need to be aware of. You don't have to. Dying's not the answer. And I don't think people want that, but they just want that feeling to go away. And luckily, mine never got to the point of no return. But that whole concept is just crazy to me. So the reason I went down that line is because I wanted to explain a little bit about what I've learned from that experience and what I think caused me to go down a depressive state. If you're comfortable, I would have some questions of why do you have body dysmorphia or eating disorders? Do you think it's something that's occurred from what people have said or done around you, or is it internal? Is it something you've watched? What do you think?
First of all, I want to congratulate you on reaching out and asking for help, because that really is the hardest part. It's a release of ego. It's saying, I don't feel like myself. And that's really hard to do. So you need to congratulate yourself on that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And to answer your question, My experience was kind of an all-encompassing experience. Like, I had family trauma and like things that I had passed down from my parents to me. And then I was bullied a lot growing up, also for like my race as well, because I'm Mexican living in Livonia, which is a very white city. But also like for my weight, and then as women, we have these expectations that we are supposed to be thin, big boobs, big butt, blonde hair, typically. And now it's kind of shifting a little bit more, which is great. But at a young age, you're so impressionable and taking in all this information that gets programmed inside of you, that if you're not meeting these expectations, then you are disgusting, you are worthless, you are wrong, nobody wants you. So it's a constant battle that I wouldn't wish on anybody, because, you know, some days I'm like fine, and other days I like don't want to eat, or, you know, overeat or what have you, or, you know, I look in the mirror and I don't see what everybody else sees, and I'll like nitpick. And it's body dysmorphia is heavily related to OCD, where you are so obsessive about your appearance. Like, you do body checks where you look in the mirror and you're like, okay, like, does my thigh look bigger today? Is my nose too big today? And like so on and so forth. It's like, it's honestly one of the hardest mental diseases to overcome, in my opinion, just because you don't see yourself for who you are. And they've done research on it, and people that have body dysmorphia, their eyes like even move a different way, and they view the world physically in a different way.
Yeah, that's insane, because like, you know, I know sometimes like there'll be some just very generic. There'll be someone who's like, "Oh, I look so fat." I'm like, "No, you don't."
Right.
But like, you can't convince somebody else of that.
Exactly.
Right?
No.
So, how do you combat that?
A lot of self-love therapy. I have to like look in the mirror, and my therapist and I currently we're moving towards, to quote her, is like a place of neutrality, where I look in the mirror and I go, "That's my nose," not "my nose is so big, I need a nose job," but "that's my nose," or "that's my thigh, that's my stomach." So it's like tricking your brain into moving towards a place of positivity, but on that spectrum, again, like you have the negative and the positive side of your thoughts. And my thoughts were so far on the negative side that, you know, I've lost myself so many times. So now we're moving more to the middle of like that neutral spot, and hopefully getting me to the positive.
And so you would say that the pressure or the issue that you have of you don't see yourself as perfect stems from you know, media pressure, as well as, you think, bullying?
Media, bullying, and also just things that like your family says to you growing up. A lot of girls, even by their family members, are like, "Oh, you need to lose weight. Oh, boys aren't going to like you if you have..."
Really?
Yes, 100%.
That's insane to me.
All of my girlfriends, we all have talked about like our parents are like, "Yeah, my mom says that my hair is too thin," or "My mom says that like I shouldn't have a second helping of, you know, pizza or whatever," because they are that worried about our appearance and how we will best fit the male gaze.
That's interesting, because it's I feel like if it's coming from somebody you care about, it's gonna be more powerful. And even if they don't mean it as like, you know, "I want you to have issues, like I want you to feel bad about yourself."
Right.
The way you take it, and at first when you said that, it didn't make sense to me, but you started explaining it, and like, I've never had people really put down a physical characteristic of mine. I have been called short several times, and I don't know why. That one never really bothered me, but I will say, in high school, you know, I had bad skin for a short while until I got on different medicines. But like, it'd be like a friend who'd be like, "Oh, you have a zit today on your chin." And I'm like, "Why would you even point that out?"
That's so shitty.
Yeah, and like they didn't mean it to be like rude, but they just said something that they noticed, and that experience, although like it didn't like have everlasting effects, it pissed me off for a little while, and like I was really insecure about my skin for a long time.
Yeah.
So now that you're kind of explaining it, if you're getting that all the time, or over a period of time about something that's more delicate than just your skin, that's something that because you can fix that.
Right.
But if it's something you can't fix, or it's hard to fix, I could see how that might be devastating. It could lead to issues like eating disorders or body dysmorphia. Because At first, I didn't understand it, but it kind of makes sense.
Whenever you have a pimple on your face now, do you hear that person's voice in your head going like, "Oh, you have a zit," or you like flash back to that moment?
I did for a long time. I don't know what happened. I think I'm lucky for this, but recently I don't give two shits anymore. But I will say, for a long time, like if I had a zit come up, I could be. This is honestly just a few years ago. I'd have a zit come up and I'm like, oh, I don't even want to go outside, or like. When if I was talking to somebody but not dating, like in the early stages, I'm like, we can't hang out because if they see me with a zit, they're not going to want to be with me, which is so unrealistic.
Exactly.
And if that was realistic, then you don't want to be with them either.
No.
But so to your question, no, I don't get that anymore. But I definitely had experienced like PTSD of, oh shit, someone made fun of my zit once, now I have another one.
Yeah.
But so do you get that now with certain things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I lost a lot of weight in college, and to this day, like my mom, you know, I love her to death. She means well, but like even when I was walking out the door today, she was like, "You look so skinny," and like in your head as a girl, typically for girls, you're like, "Oh my God, yes, like I look so good. My mom complimented me," but then at the same time, your inner child that was bullied for being overweight or whatever is going, "Well, what about me? Like, am I not good enough because I'm not skinny?" And then even though like my mom says I'm skinny, I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh my God, like I need to lose like another 200 pounds, which isn't even like physically possible right now. But
well, plus I could see like, you know, your mom says you're skinny, but because you're so used to like, you're programmed to think that people call you overweight. Yeah. Now you're like, well, she's just saying it just to say it because she's my mom, or does she actually mean it?
100%.
And I was watching. I'm a big TED Talk guy, and I was watching a TED Talk that's kind of similar to that. It's like, it was like basically how to have good conversations, or something like that. And one of the tips was give genuine compliments. And the reason being is because sometimes you get used to hearing certain words, and you just like, I could tell you you're pretty every single day, and if you're told you're pretty every single day, even though I mean it, it's gonna become less significant. Exactly. So instead, complimenting somebody on like, oh, your hair length, or did you do your eyebrows today? It's not something they hear all the time. So like if your mom constantly tells you, oh, you're skinny, you know, you're almost immune to the effect that could have. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Like you said, you start to believe like, are you just saying that because you love me? Or is it the truth? And I want to see a world in where we move towards compliments that don't have to do with appearance. Yeah. Like, you are such a kind individual. When you help that person, that was really amazing of you. That has way more weight to it than like, oh, like you look gorgeous today.
I 100% agree. Yeah. And I will say, for me, as a guy, I don't really get many compliments on, oh, you look good today, or whatever. So when I get those, it does feel good. But with somebody, especially if I don't know them very well, says, you know, just from observing you, I just know you're so kind, or like, you have a really nice laugh or something like that. Like it makes me blush. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah. I haven't heard that one before. Yeah. As sort of like, oh, you're funny, or you know, something that like is such comment that you could use it universally to really anybody. Yeah. It doesn't mean as much, even if it's meant genuinely. So I hear that. And
you're gonna remember that compliment more of like, oh, they liked my laugh, or they do think I'm kind, instead of like, oh, they liked my shirt or whatever.
Yeah, that's another thing that I listen to and I definitely agree with is, you know, you might not remember somebody's name or what they said to you, but you'll remember how they made you feel. 100%. So I could tell you you're pretty, and you could walk out of here and like, you know, 3 other people already told you that, so it's like, eh. But if I told you like, I don't know, a compliment that's specific to you, and you know that I was looking at you when I said it, or hearing you when I said it, you're like, oh, that guy was actually paying attention at least. At the very least, he was paying attention. Exactly. And that made you feel good. Yeah. So I definitely agree with your line of thinking of you want to start giving compliments that are more subjected around the person and how they interact with each other instead of physical appearance. Yeah. Which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, and like especially like with the media, all of us are so pressured to look a certain way. But at the end of the day, we're all going to look different. That's how we're all built. Yeah. So why are we relying so heavily on appearance-based compliments when it's like, it sounds so cheesy, but like it's what on the inside that really counts. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. Going back to something you said before, you said you kind of get a lot of your pressure from, you know, either something you heard growing up, like bullying, or something you see in the media. Do you still use like social media, or do you still watch the news?
I don't watch the news. Okay. I do use social media, But I have recently set those time limits on your iPhone. You can set like 2.5 hours, and that's all the screen time you get for the day.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, even last night I was watching TikToks, and like 5 TikToks in a row were like, "You're gonna die," and everybody hates you.
What?
Yeah.
What's on your TikTok?
I don't know. It was on my For You page, and I was like, I need to go to bed. Like, this is terrible. But like, it's so easy to form opinions based on what other people are saying, especially on Twitter. And don't even get me started on Instagram with people posting things that their life doesn't look like in real life. Like, that's great that you took this great journey to like Bali or whatever, but are you really happy?
Yeah, and it seems like every episode now, social media comes up in some aspect, but I think it's because it's such a big part of society now. But I was having this conversation a few days ago with a couple of my friends just at home because they listened to the first episode about social media. Mm-hmm. And they were saying, it was Ross specifically, again, saying it's hard for him to show his true self on social media, and he feels like he doesn't see anybody else's true self. Yeah. And I get that to an extent because I think there's definitely people who, portray a life that's not theirs. Mm-hmm. But I think you can portray your actual self on social media, but it's not like from one post. It takes a long time. Like, and I use mine as an example. Perhaps mine doesn't look like how I really am, but I think it's pretty accurate. Like, when I was a kid, I had some bad humor on there. I had some inappropriate things, but as I've grown, it's kind of matured out. Yeah. And now I've posted more professional things, or I'm more vulnerable as it goes forward. So you see me as a person grow and mature and whatnot. So I think it's a lot more representative of me. Mm-hmm. But I think there's definitely people, and I know in person, are to be one thing, and then what they post on social media is completely opposite. I think that's where a lot of the issue comes from, because it's like, well, now I'm comparing myself to this, which isn't even like, it's not even so much the best version of them, it's a fake version of them. Mm-hmm. Because that's another thing we were talking about is it so bad to just post your positive things, like your vacations, or things that you're accomplishing? Like if I got a new job and posted about it, is that so bad? Mm-hmm. I don't think so, but I think the dangerous part is when you post things that are fake. Mm-hmm. Because now you're comparing things to a false reality.
Yeah, and it is far more courageous to be you on social media than to like post like the airbrush picture. And like, if you want to do that, like totally, like that's your life, that's your Instagram, whatever, do it. But comparison is really the name of the game with social media, especially on Instagram, where, oh my God, they're doing so much better than I am. Look, they have this new project. Like, I'm not doing enough. And that's something I'm definitely working on. And I don't know how your experience is, but that's definitely a major downfall of social media.
For you, is the comparisons?
Comparison, yeah.
So knowing that external pressure and comparisons kind of can be an enabler for your body dysmorphia or for your anxiety or depression.
Yes.
Why do you continue to view it, even if it's for a shorter amount?
Because it's addicting.
Yeah, which, there's actually like I forgot the name of it, but there's like certain types of engineers that their job is to design the app to be as addicting as possible. Yep. Which is kind of concerning.
It's very concerning. And did you watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix?
No, but I heard I should.
You gotta watch it. Okay. Like, it's mind-blowing. But I'm trying to use my social media for good. Mm-hmm. And especially on Instagram, on my story, I post like motivational quotes or information like the stuff we're talking about today with like, gender, sexual orientation, what have you. Mm-hmm. So you do have the power to do good with it.
Yes,
as you do with everything.
I agree. Yeah. It's just a lot of people don't, because, and I think, as to my initial point from that episode, is the people who are trying to put off this image of, look what I have, look what I am, and it's not true. Yep. It's because they have something on their own, something internal that's an issue that they haven't faced, that maybe they dragged from childhood, it sounds like. Yeah, it's ego, it's insecurity, it's childhood trauma. Humans are complex, so it could be a number of things. So how do you think, just my question to you is, how do you think people, because it's hard to open up, it's hard to be vulnerable, and just from personal experience, calling my brother in that night, my brothers, that was more scary than the thought I had almost of, what I wanted to do. Yeah. Because if it's not well received, then you feel, I think the issue for being vulnerable and speaking up and telling people about your feelings is you don't know how it's going to be received. And if it's people you care about and they don't receive it well, then you're going to feel worse than if you said anything. Mm-hmm. So I guess in your opinion, how do you get people to overcome that barrier? Or how have you overcame it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an actor, so like I was trained to be vulnerable, but I also want to remind everybody that you are not alone in how you're feeling. And let's say the people that you care about don't necessarily feel highly of you in that moment. If they really cared about you, they would understand where you're coming from and try to help you. Mm-hmm. And the great thing is there's always somebody that wants to help you, that wants to make sure that you feel heard, that you're getting the help that you need. It's just being vulnerable is really scary, but it's the bravest thing you can do. Because at the end of the day, we're all feeling the same gross feelings. We're all dealing with this bullshit that like life is throwing at us. So I feel like if we can all just be more vulnerable with one another, we can be more kind to one another, we can be more compassionate, and we can see more eye to eye and get more shit done.
I agree. I definitely agree. And I guess this is one thing that probably you and I both can't answer. If you can, try it. Mm-hmm. What you said, I 100% agree. You should try to open up. There's people, and I believe there's always people that feel similar to you, if not the exact same way. Mm-hmm. But for the people who feel like there's no one else that cares, because you said you think everyone cares, and I would agree. Yeah. I think humans genuinely do care about one another, some more than others. Yeah. But for the people who feel like, oh, I have nobody, mm-hmm. who are they supposed to open up to, you know? Mm-hmm. I feel like that's got to be super difficult.
I can't imagine. I mean, I feel really lucky. I have great friends and a great family. Mm-hmm. But there's always somebody, there's always resources, whether it is a therapist or they have like suicide hotlines, which can or can't be effective. But even I've seen a lot of love and support through social media if you go through the right users. Yeah. My cousin especially, she struggles a lot with her mental, illnesses, and she does turn a lot to her community on social media. So I think even having anybody, even online, just somebody that you can talk to, it makes you feel so much less alone.
I agree. Because like you said, everyone's feeling his feelings, and it's a lot easier to deal with if you're doing it with somebody else.
Exactly.
Even if, they're not going through the same exact thing. Yeah. So, I mean, I agree with that. If you feel like there's no one out there, please, you can, everyone says this, but you can reach out to me. You know, and I think you'd be the same way.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't like the idea of anyone feeling isolated just because I felt that way, even though I knew I had so many good friends and good family members. It always is uncomfortable. Once you break that seal, it becomes a lot easier. And I think my relationships with my brothers and my friends who I've talked to it about has only gotten better.
Exactly.
Would you say that you've noticed the same thing with people you've opened up to?
100%, because you're showing who you are to those people that already love you. You're just going to strengthen that bond even more. And they're going to go, well, Seth opened up to me, so now I can open up to him. We have that mutual agreement now.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad yours has kind of gone the same way mine has, because I know, you're going into a dark area with no flashlight. You don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
But I'm glad it worked out for you.
Yeah.
We could go on and on about this, but before we get to the end, I do want to just ask you, what is one thing that you do that helps you achieve good mental health, or you do to keep you happy? Because I think everyone has their own different ways of handling it with it, but some people who might feel like they don't know what to do, they could learn from what you do or what I do. So for me, it's music, but I'd like to know, something that you like to do that helps you achieve good mental health.
I will say a cheesy little quote for you.
Sure.
You can't pour from an empty cup. So you have to fill your own cup first. And that's going to look different for everybody. So you have to do what feels good to you in that moment, so long as you are not hurting yourself or others emotionally, physically, spiritually, or mentally. So that could be like going for a walk and listening to your favorite music. It could be talking to a therapist, which I still highly recommend for everybody. Get a therapist. I just love watching TV and learning from other artists. I'm a very creative individual, so I paint, I draw. I'm also a comedian, and I sing all the time. Like, I'm a singer, and when I'm feeling like really, really low, I just gotta sing. I dance, I act, like anything that you can fuel that creativity that we all have inherently as humans. We are all creative. You need to fuel that, and that is going to be the thing that will heal you. And once you fill your own cup with all of that goodness of things that bring you joy and love, then you can fill other people's cups. And then that also comes down to community care is self-care. Mm-hmm. You can't be in good health if your community is not. So make sure once you've taken care of yourself, take care of others, and you'll find a lot of love and light in that.
I like that. And it sounds like all those different ways you find happiness are just different ways to express yourself and breed that creativity that, like you said, humans innately have.
Exactly.
I like that. Yeah. And I do just want to give you a chance to, don't you have a podcast?
Yes, I do have a podcast. It's Broke Actors Talking on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Listen to it. I'm gonna catch up with her outside of this to hear about her acting stories. But if you want to listen yourself, that's the name of it. Go check it out. Mm-hmm. Megan, it has been a pleasure. I'm very glad to see you here. It's still crazy to me. So thank you for coming on. Guys, if you want to be a guest on this show, please send me a message, send me an email. By this point, you know where to find me if you're hearing this. So until next time, thank you.